If you think about technological developments, it seems that most of the credit seems to go to California, but not even the whole state, really just this small area we like to call Silicon Valley. But I'd like to take a moment to show you that Texas has played an enormous role in the development of computer technology, probably far more than you'd think. So I'm calling this video series The Amazing Tech from Texas. But first, since I know I have a lot of viewers from other states, and in fact other countries, I thought I should spend just a little bit of time to tell you a little bit about the state that I call home, and maybe set the record straight on a few things. Texas is big. It's really, really big. In fact, to put some perspective with that, if you overlay Texas on top of Europe, you can see it's bigger than most any country, which makes sense being that Texas was its own country from 1836 to 1846 before joining the United States of America. If you want to drive from one end of Texas to the other without ever stopping, it would take over 11 hours for the drive. Not only is Texas bigger than Germany, but you'd have to add in the Netherlands, Belgium, Denmark, the Czech Republic, Switzerland, and Austria, and you'd still be looking at slightly less land area than the state of Texas. However, one notable difference is the population. We have roughly 28.9 million people living here in Texas, where that same land area in Europe has 146 million, or roughly 5 times the population density. Texas certainly has a lot of rural land, and we still have a reputation that suggests that people who live here all live on farms and ranches and wear cowboy hats and drive pickup trucks. Well, actually the last two things are true. Lots of Texans do wear cowboy hats, especially in the rural areas, and we do drive a lot of pickup trucks, even in the city. Many TV shows, such as Dilbert, poke fun at the stereotypical Texan.
Eat your possum, Dorian, or you ain't getting another one.
Or like Howard in The Big Bang Theory, where he visits Texas.
Can you please take that stupid hat off?
No, I want to blend in.
However, what you might not know is that Texas is also home of some very large cities, such as Ft.Worth and Dallas, which is where I live, and then Austin, Houston, and San Antonio. Together, these form what we call the Texas Triangle. It's basically the largest metropolitan areas of the state. But we do have some smaller cities that I will be mentioning in the series, such as El Paso and Lubbock. Also, this part of Texas up here is what we refer to as the panhandle. So if you imagine Texas as a cooking pan, that would be the handle you'd grab onto. And while Texas has a reputation as being rich in oil, you might also be surprised to know that Texas has the largest installed base of wind power of any other state in the USA, and pretty much any other country besides China, Germany, or India. We also produce a lot of nuclear power at Comanche Peak. During the course of this series of videos, I'll be taking a road trip across Texas to visit some of the famous sites where technological breakthroughs took place, and also just visiting a few places that you've probably never heard of, but I think you'll find it fascinating. However, we're going to start right here in the Metroplex. We call it the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex because the two cities, along with several others, have just grown into one giant city. So where's the downtown area? Well, we have downtown Fort Worth and Dallas, which I think everyone knows about. But then we also have another skyline area here in Las Colinas. And then in the northern part of Dallas, we actually have 2 more downtown areas with their own skyline. And if that wasn't enough, you'll find more tall buildings in Plano and Frisco areas, giving us like 7 downtown areas with their own unique skylines. If you watch the 1978 TV series called Dallas, you've probably seen the Dallas skyline before. But let me tell you something, Dallas has grown by leaps and bounds since 1978. The downtown area is really something to look at. The tallest building is 74 floors. Now, both me and my wife used to work in these buildings a while back, not at the same companies, of course. This is the High Five, a massive 5-level Mixmaster in North Dallas. And see that complex of buildings right there next to it? All of that is Texas Instruments, which we'll be talking about in the next episode. On the other side of the High Five is the North Dallas skyline. And if you look towards the horizon in the background, you can see 2 other skylines off in the distance. In fact, I'll show you one of them. This is another part of North Dallas by the Galleria. In fact, I filmed a previous episode here on the Fisher-Price Pixel camera a few years ago. Now this is Las Colinas, which has its own impressive skyline. Microsoft is located in this area, and I'll talk more about that in the next episode. This is downtown Fort Worth. I live about 10 minutes away from here. In fact, I can actually see the skyline of Fort Worth from the roof of my house. Now, my brother has worked in this part of the city for like 20 years, and this is where Radio Shack or Tandy Corporation was located, which we'll be talking about in one of the next episodes. I should also mention Central Expressway. If you drive up Central Expressway in Dallas, you can go for 20 minutes and just see one little cluster of tall buildings after another. In fact, we have around 7 million people living in this Metroplex alone, which is actually more than the entire population of the country of Norway, for example. In fact, it's the 4th largest metropolitan area in the whole United States. Myself, I live in the town of Kennedale, and when I want to go visit a friend that lives in Plano, for example, it's a 1-hour drive, just one direction, 2 hours for a round trip, and that's assuming there isn't any heavy traffic. Of course, over the years, we've had quite a few influential tech companies in the area, such as Tandy, AST, Cyrix, Texas Instruments, 3D Realms, id Software, Apple, Microsoft, and Mouser Electronics, just to name the big ones. So in this series, I'm going to be driving around to these various locations so we can see what's there. Some of these companies are still around, but most have gone out of business. In this first episode, I'm going to drive over to see where 3D Realms was located, and I have a special guest meeting me there. Just a little recap, 3D Realms actually began as Apogee Software. Some of their early games were things like Kingdom of Kroz, which actually runs in text mode. Later on, they made things like Monuments of Mars, which is a CGA puzzle side-scroller, which I spent many hours of my life playing back in the day, or the original Duke Nukem side-scroller games. Now later on, they came out with Wacky Wheels, which is a very Mario Kart-inspired racing game. If you look at the complete list, you'll see they released an impressive number of games over the years, but there's little question that the most influential game they ever released would be Duke Nukem 3D. The game was not only the 3rd incarnation of the Duke Nukem character, but also moved from a 2D side-scroller to a 3D first-person shooter. Hence, they published it under the 3D Realms name, even though it was really just all part of Apogee Software. Chances are, if you've played MS-DOS games back in the day, you've probably played this game, and possibly several other Apogee or 3D Realms games. 3D Realms was based out of Garland, Texas, and there were 2 different office locations. We'll go to the first one, which is located at 3960 Broadway Boulevard, where I'll also be meeting up with former 3D Realms employee Joe Siegler.
Hey, how's it going? Should we do this thing?
Yeah.
It's been so long since I've been here and so many memories. So, you want to talk about some of them?
Yeah. Does it look pretty much the same to you?
Well, the color has changed a bit. The color stripe has changed over the years, but overall it still mostly looks the same. Yeah, there's been so many things changed here. This canopy wasn't here when I was here before. The picture over the statue of Sam Houston wasn't here before, but overall it's still mostly the same. Yeah, walking into this building is an old memory. I can't tell you how many times I did walk into this building. See this stairwell here?
Yeah.
The elevator. Oh, this stairwell we used to just hang at the top up there and just watch people in the lobby. Speaking of the lobby, this wall here, when we used to, in the old days, this door wasn't here. And this wall had this giant rug almost to the ceiling. I don't know how far your camera is, but almost to the ceiling and down to here. We used to take staff team photos with this wall with the staff members. If you got Duke Nukem 3D, the team photo that's in the booklet is taken in front of this wall.
All right, so speaking of that, what games were actually developed here in this building?
Well, Duke Nukem 3D was made here.
And that, I mean, that in of itself is just, to think I'm standing in the presence of where Duke Nukem 3D, that's probably my all-time favorite game for MS-DOS. And I still play it today. I've been playing that game since the 90s, and I just
always
can't stop.
Always bet on Duke.
I just can't stop. I actually like it better than Doom. And
well,
it's
I'm not going to argue with that.
It's amazing to think I'm standing in the place where that was developed, where the birthplace, Duke Nukem 3D.
Yeah, that was probably the most famous one. I mean, we had other ones here too. Max Payne was done here. Shadow Warrior was done here. The original Shadow Warrior, not the newer ones. But, what else? 95. Star Gunner was here. Raptor was, well, it wasn't made here, but it was put out when we were here.
3D Realms, I think you said it was mostly upstairs, right?
Yeah. When we first moved into this building, we had a little corner down at the end of this hallway. It was like 1-2 offices, and as we expanded, we needed more space, so we started going upstairs. Eventually, we moved all the downstairs upstairs, so it would be in the same spot. And we eventually took over the entire upper floor on the right side of this building, plus 1 or 2 offices on the other side for like motion capture and stuff, because we just ran out of room. But when we were expanding, it brought the most interesting story. Probably there was one guy who had an office here a long time ago, and he was having personal problems. I don't remember all details now, it's been way too many years, but he basically was living in his office, and he didn't want to leave, and he was basically ordered out by the landlord, still didn't want to leave, and eventually the cops had to get involved to get him out, and he was armed, and the cops came into our office and said, don't care what you're doing, whatever you're doing, don't save anything, don't grab anything, get the hell out. We had about 8 cops at each exit door of our office upstairs, at the middle and the bottom of the stairwell down there, which you can't see, and here, and all of us were being escorted out of the building by an armed cop. I have never been in anything like that in my whole life. And
I guess they got the guy out.
they did eventually, because he didn't like harm himself, at least not that we're aware of anyway. But so yeah, this elevator here in the building, this is where we used to bring all the stuff we'd ship outside, you know, to people who ordered it. Most notably, Duke Nukem 3D. I mean, you ordered it back in the day. I didn't order it because I was here, but if you ordered it, it came out of this elevator, out the door, and into the truck to ship. This was where your order was if you ordered anything from us. Max Payne was like that too. When we shipped Max Payne, we actually filled the elevator floor to ceiling with shipping boxes. It was so bad, we couldn't even get in the elevator to take it down. We'd have to push the button and run out and come downstairs because it was filled with boxes.
I'm sure it dwarfs my production of Planet X3.
Well, maybe a little.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's another facility that we've got to go visit, and it's just down the road, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so I think that's where we need to go next. We need to go visit the next facility.
Let's get going.
We got in the car and drove to the next location, which was actually just a few miles down the road, located at 1661 East Northwest Highway. This building now appears to be a Goodwill store.
Okay, so we are here at a Goodwill.
Yeah.
Now, you know, if LGR were here, he'd have to go in and do some thrifting, I'm sure, because, you know, this would be...
Actually, I sent him some stuff from here in the old days, but...
This would be the ultimate Goodwill to go thrifting in, I suppose, but just because of its history. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the building.
Well, this is when we moved from the last location over here, because as we talked about, we were expanding, and we got tired of, you know, lease and whatnot, so we wanted our own place. We took over this entire building. It was, I forget how big it was, 11,000 square feet or something like that, and it was all us. We reconfigured the whole interior. We had a badass looking lobby. It had a Duke Nukem logo on the floor. It was great. It was a lot of fun. The backyard, we used to have parties and just do dumb back there. Yeah, so when we moved over here, we took some effort to not say where we went, because we had issues with gate crashers at the old place. People actually would walk in and go, "What are you doing?" Well, we couldn't do that, so when we moved over here, we made an effort not to identify where we were. There's a sign out by the curb, which is a Goodwill sign. When we were here, it was blank. We didn't have 3D Realms or Duke Nukem or Apogee or anything on the outside. After a while, the city said, well, wait a minute, you can't be here and not say who you are, and which runs counter to what we wanted to do, which is not say who we were. So we found out what the minimum city code was to identify, and we put the letters A and S on the front door for Apogee software, and that was it. That was our complete identifier in the 10 or so years we were in this building.
So what software was actually developed here in this building?
This was mostly Duke Nukem Forever. See, the thing is, Duke Nukem Forever started at the old building in late 96, and it came through the entire life of this building into the Gearbox building at the end, so it spans multiple locations. But yeah, the biggest one out of here would have been Duke Nukem Forever, and a bunch of console games and ports and things, but internally that's pretty much what we worked on the whole time we were here.
Okay, we're going to try just to go into the store and see if we can do a little bit of thrifting. Don't know if we'll find anything, but let's go have a look.
I don't think we're going to find any old Duke games.
Yeah, that would be the thing, wouldn't it?
That would be hilarious. The 1661 on the front door looks like the same one from when we were
Well, it looks like they got a lot of clothes. Do they have any like electronic stuff? I see some like CDs and records and stuff over there.
over in the corner. Here's This was my desk.
This was your desk.
Right here.
Right here.
That was my desk.
That's depressing.
Yep.
But let's see what we got over here.
Record albums.
Vinyl records. Might.
I didn't know that was over here.
I don't usually see those at Goodwill, especially that quantity.
I just recently bought a record player for the first time since '85.
I used to have one of these. Got rid of it a long time ago because, you know, it's the old style iPhone connector. You can't use that anymore. Oh, look, there's like an old boombox clock radio of some kind.
Oh, look.
What is it? Ah, no. Now that is
The Duke Nukem logo.
that is quite a coincidence. That's probably the closest thing we'll find to an actual Duke Nukem in here. Oh, look, we got an old robot. I've seen one of these before. And some old video cassettes.
Was looking to see if I could find maybe the Max Payne movie.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's gonna wrap it up. I don't think there's really a whole lot. I mean, I don't usually have much luck in Goodwills anyway. LGR seems to be the one that always finds all the crazy stuff.
He's coming and it just transports there for him.
Of course, technically there's one other location I want to show. If you look at some of the earlier releases from Apogee Software, you'll see an address listed for 4206 Mayflower, also in Garland, Texas. But the interesting thing is, it has this message next to it that says, "This address will always be valid." Well, it turns out this is where Apogee Software really got its start, which is not uncommon for the time period for software developers to work out of their homes. This was actually Scott Miller's parents' house, and I say was because they moved out several years ago, but apparently they made a contract with the new buyers that they would agree to forward on any mail for Apogee or 3D Realms that came to this address. And here it is. I won't bother these people since they don't have anything to do with 3D Realms today, but this is where it all started. We have just enough time left in this episode that I want to travel to one more location. Now, everybody has probably seen these Dallas clock chips. They were used in practically every motherboard throughout the late 1980s and through most of the 1990s. These chips were big because they were both a real-time clock and a battery all integrated into one. Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. When the batteries went dead after about 10 years, usually meant replacing the whole chip or sawing the top off so that you could mount your own battery like this. Anyway, the fact that they say Dallas on these chips is no coincidence. While this one ironically was made in the Philippines because it's a newer chip, the original ones were made right here in Dallas by a company called Dallas Semiconductor, located at 4401 South Beltwood Parkway. And while their official address was a Dallas, Texas address, they technically resided in the city of Farmers Branch. The zip code they're in is partially in Dallas and partially Farmers Branch, but they were just a few hundred feet away from the city of Addison in a totally different zip code. Maybe had they been a few hundred feet to the north or the east, those chips would have said Addison on them instead. So I took a drive out to find Dallas Semiconductor, and what I found was a little disappointing.
All right, so I'm standing in the location of Dallas Semiconductor, where all those famous chips were made, except there's only one problem. Does that look like a chip fab to you? If you think it looks like a funny chip fab building, it's because it's not. The entire Dallas facility was demolished several years ago, and then the sports facility was built here instead. So there's literally nothing that remains of the building.
Thankfully, due to the miracle of Google Earth, we can see what the building looked like from satellite view back in 2007. You can see it's surrounded by cars, and I guess work was still going on there. But then in the 2009 view, you can see that there are no more cars anymore. The company had been bought out by Maxim Integrated, and everything was moved to a new facility. In 2011, construction began on the sports facility, and today, the parking lot I was standing in was where the building once stood. And while these chips still live on today and still carry the name Dallas on them, they are no longer manufactured in the area. Okay, so we've reached the end of the first episode, and there's going to be several more episodes of this where I travel throughout Dallas, Houston, Austin, and other places. Now, I spent a lot of time trying to find these addresses. Some of them were really difficult to find. And so for each episode, I'm going to put the addresses of all the places I visit down in the description field. So if you ever want to have a look or visit those places yourself, you'll be able to find them. So the other thing is, I have a lot of other companies or former locations I'm going to be visiting, and I don't always necessarily have any inside contacts of people who either currently work or used to work at those facilities. So I'm going to put a list of companies down in the description field that I plan to visit. over the next few weeks. And if you happen to have worked there or know somebody who worked there or have any other inside information on that, please get with me. I might be able to connect with you before the end of the series. And but that wraps it up for now. So as always, thanks for watching.